Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. I hope you all have a great day. I wanted to give you my updated college football playoff predictions. Normally do this on Thursdays. I realize it's a holiday. Don't worry, I'm recording this before Thursday. But yeah, I did at least want to put this video out there and give you my predictions because I know a lot of you look forward to this each week. Before I get into the predictions, just some takeaways from the rankings this week because I did not do a reaction video. The rankings wound up being kind of late and I was busy, but I think the big surprise, or not the big surprise, but the big winners from this latest playoff ranking was, I think the winners, really, it's the entire conference. It's the ACC. It's Miami, SMU, and Clemson. SMU has now climbed up high enough into the rankings to where if they lose to Miami in the ACC championship, there's a chance, a good chance, that they still make it into the playoff. Miami's high enough now where I think they get in with a loss to SMU, assuming they beat Syracuse. And then you look at Clemson jumping ahead of Alabama and Ole Miss. That was huge because if there is an open spot now, if Clemson is able to beat South Carolina, then Clemson could possibly jump in there. And there is a scenario, and this sounds crazy, but there is a scenario where the ACC gets more playoff teams than the SEC, and it's really quite simple. All you have to have happen is Tennessee lose to Vanderbilt, Clemson beat South Carolina, SMU, Miami playing a close ACC championship game. I think Miami and SMU are in. Clemson is in. Tennessee's out. And yeah, you get 3 ACC teams in the college football playoff, and then you'd have Georgia and Texas out of the SEC. So that is a scenario, but that is not the scenario that I'm predicting. Let's get to my predictions now. We're going to start with the number 1 team. I think that's going to be Ohio State. I think they beat Oregon in the Big Ten championship game. The offensive line looked good last week, and that was going to be a big question mark after another injury, but I think they're good enough there, and this defense is really good. You look at Will Howard, he's just a gamer. I think he's a guy that when a game's on the line, you can count on him in some big games, and I think that could be the difference in the Big Ten championship. He actually almost delivered against Oregon. If he would have slid like 1 second sooner, then Ohio State could have kicked a field goal to potentially win that game. So I like Will Howard a lot. I love the weapons they've got on offense. I still think that this is the team to beat. We go down to the 2 seed. I think it's going to be Georgia. I think they beat Texas in a rematch in the SEC championship. Yes, I'm going Bulldogs 2-0 against Texas, at least at that point. So I think Georgia wins that game, and then we go to the 3 seed. I'm going SMU. I think SMU beats Miami in the ACC championship. This team has been consistent all year. They've had very few games where they, struggled at all. I mean, maybe the Duke game, but for the most part, they've taken care of business, and I think they've been more consistent than Miami. Miami maybe has more overall talent, but I think SMU gets it done. I think SMU wins that ACC championship game. That's the first time I predicted that actually all season long, and I've got Boise State at the 4 seed. They haven't been looking great, but I think they still find a way to get a win in their final game and then win the Mountain West Championship. And I'm going Arizona State to win the Big 12. There is a real possibility that Arizona State is that 4 seed. If Boise State doesn't look great in these final 2 games, I think you can make a great argument for a 2-loss Big 12 champion to be ranked ahead of a 1-loss Mountain West champion. So that's going to be very interesting to see because the gap is closing. The Big 12, I think, is closing in on Boise State, and we might see those flipped. And obviously that'd be a huge deal because it's a first-round bye. Obviously, that's a big deal. All right, so let's go to the at-large teams now. We're going to go to 5. That's Oregon. Again, I think they lose a close game to Ohio State in the Big Ten championship, but that they still get in, or they still are actually the top at-large team, and that's really not a bad draw to be number 5 because then you get Arizona State and Boise State in your first 2 games. Let's go to the 6 seed. I think that's Texas, even with another loss to Georgia. I think the win over Texas A&M is going to get them ranked. I think they beat Texas A&M on the road. Big win. I think that win is enough to keep them up there around number 6, even with a loss to Georgia. I don't think this committee is going to penalize teams much for losing in conference championship games. So I got the Longhorns at 6. Number 7, Penn State. I think Penn State takes care of business against Maryland on Saturday, and they should be right there. Then we go to number 8, Notre Dame. I think they beat USC. There's a real shot, though, that Notre Dame loses that game. USC is a talented team. Their defense has been pretty solid this year. I don't think that's a guaranteed win, but Notre Dame has looked really good here down the stretch, and I think they find a way to get that done on the road. Number 9, Tennessee. I do think Tennessee beats Vandy. It should be a hard-fought game. Not going to be an easy win for them, but I do like the Vols to take care of business against Vanderbilt. and they get into the college football playoff as the 9 seed. Number 10 seed is Indiana. I think Indiana wins their final game, and again, looking at where they were ranked last week, I think this is probably where they wind up. And then my final team in the rankings, Miami. So I think Miami ranked high enough so that they can still get in with a loss to SMU. I think they're at number 11, the final at-large spot. If they don't get penalized at all for losing to SMU in the ACC championship, then you might see them at 10, and you might see Indiana at 11. But either way, I think those teams are 10 and 11. So let's go through the games. Again, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on these matchups. They're just hypothetical matchups. We'll break down the real playoff games once the bracket comes out. And I'll tell you what, really not a lot of chaos with my predictions, as much chaos as we've seen. You look for it here in the final weekend and in maybe the conference championship games. Yes, Notre Dame, USC, that could be an upset. That could change things. I think Notre Dame still would get in, but they're probably looking at maybe being the 11 seed. I think Tennessee, Vanderbilt's going to be a tough one for Tennessee. Like I said, if they lose to Vanderbilt, I think they're probably out. And if Clemson loses to South Carolina, then it's that argument with Alabama, Ole Miss, and South Carolina. I think if South Carolina beats Clemson, they might have the best argument actually to be in there with 3 losses. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Oregon losing to Washington really wouldn't matter. Big 12, whoever comes out of there. I don't think Penn State or Indiana is going to lose their final game. Texas could lose to Texas A&M. They're still probably going to be the playoff, but their seeding would drop, obviously. And Miami could lose to Syracuse. So there are some potential upsets that could shake things up. But again, when you look at Notre Dame, Texas, even Penn State, if they lose, I still think they're in. It's just going to change the seeding. Teams that I think have a real shot of getting knocked out of the playoff, really it's just Tennessee. I think Tennessee is that one team that could get knocked out. So we'll see how that plays out. And Miami also, I think, because if they lose to Syracuse, how far do they fall? Then Clemson goes to the ACC championship. So we could still get some chaos, but I think it's gonna play out without too much of that this weekend. But again, let's go through the matchups here really quickly. I think Notre Dame at home with their defense, they beat Tennessee. Pretty low scoring game there, but give me the Irish. Oregon, Arizona State, I think the Ducks roll here in this one. Penn State, Indiana. This is a game, again, the last couple of weeks I've had Indiana winning because I've had these two teams matched up. But when you saw Ohio State just dominated the line of scrimmage, and Michigan as well against Indiana, I think Penn State's going to be too much up front. I think Penn State beats Indiana. Texas, Miami. Texas too much on both sides of the ball. They win this one. Then we got Ohio State, Notre Dame. Great game. You look at the way Notre Dame has played again down the stretch. They look like one of the best teams in the country. So they absolutely could pull this one off. And this, I think, would be the best game. If these are the matchups, I think this is the best game of this round. But I think Ohio State, they get the win here in a close one. Then we got Oregon, Boise State. I'm going to go with the Ducks here, and they win even easier than the first time. Georgia, Penn State. Kirby Smart, again, I trust him, especially with an extra week to prepare. Give me the Bulldogs in that matchup. Texas, SMU. This would be a good one. I think SMU's offense can score some points even against a good Texas defense, but Texas just overwhelms them in the end. Too much depth. Give me the Longhorns there. And we get two games that will be played for the third time if my predictions play out. So Ohio State, Oregon, this will be the rubber match between them. I'm going to go with Ohio State. They get the win in that one. And then Georgia, Texas. I think beating a team 3 times in one season, that's tough to do. I think Texas gets the win this time. The Longhorns get the win over Georgia after Georgia beats them the first 2 times this season. And then we get Ohio State and Texas in the national championship, and I'm sticking with the Buckeyes. That's been my pick all season long. Going back to the preseason, I was very close to changing it a couple of times, but decided to just stick with this Ohio State team. And with 1 week left, we may stick with them all the way to the end of this thing. Even if they lose to Oregon in the Big Ten championship, is another really close game. I don't think that. I still think Ohio State might win it all, but Oregon is definitely on my radar. Oregon has looked like the best team throughout this season. You look at the Wisconsin game, though, they did look beatable. And again, Ohio State had their chance against them in the regular season. So I can't wait for that Big Ten championship. And I don't think I'm going to switch from Ohio State until I see that game. And then maybe we make the switch to Oregon. Or maybe Georgia or Texas really impressed me here down the stretch. We'll see when it actually comes to the playoff field being revealed and what those matchups look like. But for now, I'm sticking with the Buckeyes. Give me your playoff predictions down in the comments below.